Before the Great Depression, there was mass overinvestment and risk-taking in the stock industry, which inflated their prices and gave the illusion of a strong economy. Due to this high buying of stocks, banks began to loan money to stock buyers in the 1920s. Then, in October of 1929, the New York Stock Exchange crashed. When the market crashed, the stock value began to go down and fearful investors pulled out their money, making the value of the stocks and the economic situation worse. Due to so many investors pulling out, the banks began to go under and desperately began pulling in business loans and mortgages, hoping to stay open. Most people were unable to pay back this money, thrusting them into debt and poverty. As banks began to close, the level of spending was dramatically reduced, lowering the demand of products and the need to produce them, continuing the downward spiral. Without this demand, output decreased and the amount of unemployment rose. The following time period became known as the Great Depression. Herbert Hoover, the president during the beginning of the Great Depression, had actions with good intentions but little effect. At the end of his term, Hoover ran for re-election against Franklin D. Roosevelt, who won the election. During his acceptance speech is when Roosevelt first used the phrase New Deal, in which he said, I pledge myself to a new deal for the American people. During the first 100 days, Roosevelt met with Congress and passed an unprecedented number of bills to help America overcome the Depression. The first measure taken was the Emergency Banking Act, which provided Roosevelt with the power to reopen viable banks and to begin to regulate the banking system. This was quickly followed by the Economy Act and the Beer-Wine Revenue Act. The former cut federal costs, while the latter taxed wine and beer, bringing more income into the national government. Later on, the Agricultural Adjustment Act was passed, which decreased the amount of crop surpluses by giving revenue to farmers who cut back on farm production. This allowed the principle of supply and demand to attempt to slowly rebuild the cost of these crops, bringing money back into the national economy. Roosevelt realized a wave of poverty had overtaken the nation, and he wanted to take it back. In May of 1933, the Federal Emergency Relief Act brought the Federal Emergency Relief Administration into existence. The goal was to give out about $500 million to states for relief. However, the agency was able to give out about $3 billion in relief and wages for public works over its operation period. On top of giving out money and supplies, the New Deal created the Home Owners Loan Corporation. The HOLC was used to help people keep their homes from foreclosure, fighting the number of people forced to live on the streets. For the people aided, this was a great help. These programs fought poverty and took care of people's basic needs by giving them hope, as well as allowing them to contribute to the healing of their country by working and purchasing products. However, not all people had access to these programs. The New Deal also began to examine the workforce. There are thousands of unemployed eager for the dignity and financial security of a job. This led to the creation of the Civil Conservation Corps, one of the New Deal's most successful programs. In an attempt to combat unemployment, the Civil Conservation Corps sent 3 million young single men to the nation's forests to begin to work. They planted trees, dug ditches, and built reservoirs in order to help with road building, flood control, and general forestry labor. This allowed for these men to find work positions while also bettering the nation with the creation of national parks and fixing problems. The New Deal went one step further in tackling unemployment as well as working conditions. The National Industrial Recovery Act and the National Recovery Administration regulated the number of hours that could be worked by any worker per week and banning child labor. This again led to the employment of new adults, since children could no longer be used and each adult could only be used a set number of hours. However, unemployment numbers still remained high.
And we survived it. You just have to go on. That's all there is to it. Sure, it makes people stronger.
But people fail to realize, as we did then, people who had lived through other bad business eruptions, that how you can sustain yourself. And this gave you the outlook of self-sufficiency and doing it yourself.
And I think going through those times made us all stronger.
Roosevelt introduced a number of major changes in the structure of the American economy, using increased government regulation and massive public works projects to promote a recovery. But despite this active intervention, mass unemployment and economic stagnation continued, though on a somewhat reduced scale. The Depression ended completely soon after the United States' entry into World War II in 1941. After the Great Depression, government action, whether in the form of taxation, industrial regulation, public works, social insurance, social welfare services, or deficit spending, came to assume a principal role in ensuring economic stability in most industrial nations with market economies.